The next page in your packet is How Can I Help? This is just kind of ideas that might stimulate areas of need. It might help people to want to become engaged. I think that if we can look at seeing beyond stereotypes, that is one that fits the work that all of us do here. Because if you were to ask one of my volunteers when they first started, what does a homeless person look like? You guys can all answer that, what your answers probably are. You know, they're the people standing on the side of the street with the signs. When they meet our families and learn who and why people can be homeless, then it helps to educate them, and we are helping to break those stereotypes. And I think that the work that each and every one of us that are sitting in this room do, we have that ability to help break those stereotypes and help educate our community on the needs, you know, the lack of housing, the lack of employment, the lack of understanding that it's could be you or I that might find ourselves in a situation of needing a food pantry or a housing organization.
And so much of the How Can I Help is just that human kindness, that understanding, you know, putting yourself in someone else's shoes. You know, I'm a homeless single mom, and I've been out pounding the pavement all day, and maybe I got turned down for 2 or 3 jobs. And the most compassionate question somebody could ask me at the end of the day, how was your day? That could put me in total meltdown because my day was really rotten. And so, you know, that training specific to what you do and specific to what the volunteers are going to do with your clients is so key. And who would ever think by asking someone, how was your day, could have those types of ramifications? So training is really very, very important. And just, as I said, that human kindness, that understanding privacy and listening and leaving that judgment at the door, those are so important with all of the populations we serve.
The next page is an emergency information. In your facility somewhere where everyone can see, there should be an emergency list. And if 911 is the first call, then 911 should be up there. Even though everyone should know 911, a volunteer should know that in case something happens, they should call 911. And then who do they call after that? Do they call you? Do they call a different volunteer? Sometimes different volunteers or employees are in charge of different things. So if it's a facilities issue, who do you call? If it's a people issue, who do you call? It's important for people that are volunteers to have that information in front of them in a place that they know it's there so that they can make the calls if necessary. Questions about that? That's pretty easy, I think.
The next form is our hospitality code, and this is very specific to Family Promise, but again, this could be adapted for any of your shops, and really it kind of ties back to the How Can I Help with the fact that our families do need privacy from time to time, and sometimes those tough questions are very difficult for them to ask, and you know, that just because they're homeless, we still treat them like adults with respect, and that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing to overcome their situation. So this is our hospitality code, but I think it's important. It shows that human side to your volunteers. That's what they're bringing, and that it's supported from within your organization as well.
Are there any questions or comments so far before we go into the next segment? Okay.
I just wanted to ask, because I know we have a lot of programs here that are very small, and they don't have an opportunity to have a person, either a volunteer or a person on staff, to be the coordinator or to do the interviewing. And how would you handle all of that if you were a really small organization?
I would be in search of a volunteer to find help to do that. We have 3 paid staff members in my office. So we're not a very large organization, but we have 1,100 volunteers, and that's how we piggyback all of our things, is through our volunteers. When I say that there's someone that interviews volunteers, she's a volunteer. Okay, just like each and every one of you are volunteers. Well, most of you are volunteers, and so it's important to be on the lookout and look for those gifts and other volunteers to engage them to help you with this job. Okay? It is like, is it Bill? Like Bill, you know, he came in just as a volunteer and they saw that he had potential, and so little by little he took on more responsibility. And it's really important because burnout is huge in the volunteer realm as well as in the paid realm, if it's just you trying to do everything, because we're giving you a lot of information, and one person cannot do this all. So it is about continuing to build your volunteer base with people that have the potential to help you implement these things.
I can speak from a real experience as well. I had 25 years with the organization Easter Seals here in West Palm Beach, and I brought a young woman on board for 20 hours a week. Now, I presented this kind of out to the universe, if you will. I was looking for someone who would be a non-paid employee. So I put it out there that I was looking for someone for approximately 20 hours per week. A woman came to me and she said, "I'm it. You know, my kids are grown, my husband's at work all day. It's not about the paycheck for me, it's about getting involved." Now, was it a needle in a haystack? There were quite a few needles in that haystack. I was very fortunate, but this woman decided to step up and take this job, this non-paying job. She worked her 20 hours a week doing exactly what Koki said. She's out recruiting volunteers, she's interviewing them, she's trying to match them to things we're doing. She's out in the corporate world, speaking in front of Kiwanis clubs and Rotaries, and some corporations, they do like a lunch and learn where their employees will eat lunch and bring in a speaker. She went in front of all of those groups. And what I saw was this mushroom just created. Now, here's this woman working for zero. She's bringing companies to the table who heard her speak on their lunch hour, which is then resulting in corporate gifts. It's resulting in bodies coming into our center and feeding children with disabilities on their lunch hour. It brought in civic groups. Next thing you know, we've got Rotary clubs interested in helping us. So here's this one catalyst. Zero paycheck. It was not about the money. If you go back to what pushed her buttons on this list, it was not a paycheck. It was the ability to create something from nothing, to watch it grow, and to see the results of what she had put into it. So we all have the ability to find that one person who has whatever reason is motivating them, but it's not a paycheck. And if it's the kind of person that's that self-starter, watch me build something, they will build something that you can be proud of. You don't find them overnight, but you might. You're probably one of those folks. Yes.
At the Jubilee Center, we have a volunteer coordinator, but it is nowhere near as well organized as I'm hearing this morning. And I'm not sure we have the right person in that job. And I'm contemplating, how am I going to get from here to that step where either that person is agreeing to do an awful lot more, or whether I look for someone else. And then I also realize that we operate during the time when most people are working. So we're pretty much dependent on young people who are unemployed or older people who are retired. And I guess one of the thoughts going through all of this is, what kind of a person should I be looking for? Your description of this woman who has the ability to stand before large groups or small groups and represent your organization is terrific. Is that the best kind of a volunteer coordinator, or is it someone who is really good at dealing with the volunteers? So this is enlightening to me, but frightening.
I don't think it's an either or. And it might not be one person. It might be more than one person. It might be one person that's great at overseeing the volunteers, and that's what they do. It might be another person that has the gift of gab and doesn't mind standing in front of a group and presenting who you are and what your needs are. So if we're in general talking about it being one person, please don't do that. Don't put yourself in those boxes. Remember that we all have time constraints, and we have talent constraints as well. So find the individual or individuals that can help meet those needs across the board. We also have a volunteer that she probably spends 35 hours a week just on Family Promise. But we have coordinators in other areas that do other things. So it's not just one person. And you just have to realize that there's a plethora of people out there that are willing to help. We post volunteer needs on the United Way website. That helps bring in some volunteers. So there are places in your community that will post volunteer needs for you. And maybe, I mean, if you're in Palm Beach County, you can contact me and I can give you a couple of places. But just know that, keep putting it out there to volunteers or for volunteers, but also reach out into the community and utilize the resources that are there that you might not know about. Do some research or contact Rhonda or myself, and we'll help you to the best of our ability to find ways of getting your work out there.
The other thing that as I was listening to you struck me is that along with interviewing people for volunteer positions, it's helpful to have a process of selection. And one of the things that we do is when someone is coming in and offering to volunteer, we actually ask them to describe pretty specifically the kinds of things that they have done in the past, so that if you've got 2 or 3 things that this volunteer position that you've got isn't really meeting the needs well, if it has to do with scheduling, to be able to ask a potential volunteer, give us some examples of when you had to do scheduling so that you have a real sense of what the person is capable of doing. Because I think that our experience has been that in some ways it is more painful to set up a volunteer for failure than setting a staff person up for failure. It's never good, but it's particularly painful when it's a volunteer person, and that with some selection and interviewing techniques you can help avoid some of that, at least some of the time.
The other thing that I'd like to mention is the training aspect. If the coordinator that you're speaking of, maybe they just need a little revisit to what's expected or what that person might grow into. Maybe it's a conversation with that person about, you've been doing this for a long time. Is it still meeting your needs? How do you see yourself staying with us or moving forward with us? Having that conversation allows you to open the door for feedback from them, as well as for you to give them feedback in return.
I just wanted to mention that when you are looking for those people, it's not just United Ways that you can go to, but there are a variety of different organizations. Children's Services Council puts announcements on their website, and there's one in each county. There's a Spirit of Giving group in South Palm Beach County, North Broward County, and it's a group of professional people, but they do a lot of volunteer work, and they are always making announcements. There are these folks that have their websites. There's just a plethora of places to go. And don't forget about the retired folks. And I don't know whether there's still the RSVP program through United Way organization, and also, we have so many retirement communities, they would probably allow you to put something on their bulletin boards. So, and I know very well there are people in gated communities that are so out of the realm of what's going on with our nonprofits. And I know people personally that would like to get involved, but they don't know how. And so to try and maybe make inroads into some of those places and be able to come and speak at their community meeting or post something might be another way to go about finding the folks that you need, because that's the first step.